Thank you so much, Ian, for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a pleasure to be here at my first CNA conference as Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. You know, I'm told this is the Oscars of the Canadian nuclear sector. And when I saw the people up here in the introduction, I know that to be true. So I'm hoping I won't disappoint. Ladies and gentlemen, as has been said, Canada is at a pivotal moment. We are facing disruptions in our markets, in our trade relationships, in our national security, in technology, and in climate. And amid these disruptions, we must find purpose, we must find clarity, we must deliver ambition, and we must do it with resolve. Providing that clarity is what yesterday's spring economic update is about. It attacks the moment we are in by delivering targeted relief to make life more affordable while we strengthen Canada's competitiveness and our economic growth, supporting workers, accelerating construction of homes, and making major infrastructure projects real, investing in a strong, safe Canada. This includes the Canada Strong Fund, Canada's first national sovereign wealth fund. It will invest in key strategic Canadian projects and companies. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly suspect there will be a real opportunity for the fund to invest in our nuclear renaissance. It includes Team Canada Strong, a new nationwide effort to recruit, train, and hire as many as 100,000 new skilled trades workers by 2031. Ladies and gentlemen, those workers will help build our nuclear future. And it includes a host of measures that will build stronger, safer communities, including for Indigenous peoples. It will create a more connected country by providing the essential infrastructure we need to build one Canadian economy. The economic update and this government's entire agenda is based on a simple idea that history, and for those of you closer to my age with gray hair, has shown us that nations are tested not when everything is going well, but when crisis strikes. That is when we find out whether a country still knows how to act on its advantages. Well, when it comes to Canada's advantages, we have to look no further than the nuclear energy industry in this country and the people in this room. If I may, I'd like to take a step back in time for a minute to talk about the people who built our industry. Over 100 years ago, a few hours from here at McGill University, with the arrival of a New Zealand-born physicist named Ernest Rutherford as McGill's first new physics professor. The story has it that Rutherford had some misgivings at the time. Canada was hardly seen as the center of the scientific world. But to his surprise, he showed up to the newest, best-equipped physics lab in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Canada, always beating expectations. Within 10 years, Rutherford and his Montreal team had cracked the code on radioactivity, the basis of nuclear science, and earned Canada's first Nobel Prize. Just over a decade later, Canada's first uranium deposit was discovered in Great Bear Lake, Northwest Territories, and we were officially off to the races. In 1945, the first nuclear reactor outside the United States was started up 2 hours from here, a breakthrough that laid the foundation for the CANDU reactor, a federally funded, uniquely Canadian nuclear design fueled by natural, unenriched uranium that brought Canada's first nuclear power plant to life in 1962. Today, the nuclear sector employs over 90,000 Canadians, 90% of which are high-skilled roles. The sector contributes 13% of our national electricity supply and adds $17 billion to the economy every year through the operation of 18 reactors at home and the servicing of 9 CANDU reactors abroad in countries like Romania, India, and South Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, this is possible because, unlike many of our allies, we have expertise up, down, and across the supply chain. From designing and manufacturing high-precision components, to R&D, to servicing and building reactors abroad. This strength is what will make us the first country in the G7 to host an SMR at Darlington, the first nuclear energy project referred to our Major Projects Office by the Prime Minister, backed by a $2 billion investment from the Canada Growth Fund, the fund's biggest investment to date, and $1 billion from Ontario through their Building Ontario Fund. Of course, foundational to our nuclear leadership is our position as the world's second largest producer of uranium, with the largest high-grade reserves on the planet. Our world-class uranium gives us the capacity to fuel our own fleet while still exporting nearly 90% of our production to global markets. A true example of how we are creating energy security at home and for our allies abroad. The last time a new uranium mine was approved for construction in Canada was 2004. But excitingly, in the last 2 months of 2026, we approved 2 new mines, which together will produce enough uranium to power more than every Canadian home 2 times over. Finally, perhaps spoken about less but no less important, Canada also leads in areas that matter for long-term public confidence, including nuclear safety and radioactive waste management and the implementation of deep geological disposal in partnership with the municipality of Ignis, Ontario, and the Wobegon Lake Ojibwe Nation. Our nuclear expertise and know-how are perfect examples of what we mean when we say Canada has what the world wants. 38 countries have now endorsed the goal of tripling nuclear capacity by 2050. And the International Energy Agency estimates nuclear investment could grow to as much as $200 billion annually by 2030, more than double what it was in 2023. A big part of what this is over 30 countries pursuing nuclear power for the very first time, many of which are looking to reduce dependence on geopolitically exposed energy sources, strengthen their sovereignty, and secure long-term baseload power from trusted partners. And many of our allies are increasingly saying Canada is that trusted partner. Canada is also working closely with allies such as the United Kingdom and Romania, who are turning to nuclear energy to meet climate goals while reinforcing national and regional energy security. This nuclear renaissance is also a climate opportunity. It is an energy security opportunity. But critically, it is an economic opportunity for Canada, for provinces and territories, and for the over 250 companies that make up the nuclear supply chain here in Canada. We are extraordinarily well positioned to seize this opportunity. And while a less ambitious country would rest on that advantage, ladies and gentlemen, we will not. Instead, under this government, we will have, for the first time, a comprehensive nuclear energy strategy led by the federal government, but developed in collaboration with provinces, industry, utilities, labor, Indigenous peoples, and beyond. A strategy that grows our advantage, that powers our nations and our allies. A plan that seizes the opportunity before us. I look forward to releasing this strategy in the coming weeks, which will set the vision for Canada's nuclear sector's role in domestic and global energy security, our industrial strategy, our trade diversification agenda, and our plan to be an energy superpower and the strongest economy in the G7. But for today, I would like to preview what I'm thinking about as we develop the full strategy. First, enabling new nuclear builds. This pillar will focus on building big at home in both small and large-scale nuclear. To do this, we must de-risk nuclear investments, facilitate private and public financing, advance Indigenous partnerships, and prioritize projects that make economic and strategic sense. Second, we will be positioning Canada as a global supplier and exporter. As outlined in Budget 2025, we are assertingly pursuing a nuclear energy strategy that will target priority markets and support Canadian players at all levels of the supply chain as they look abroad for export opportunities. It almost goes without saying, but this folds perfectly into our government's focus on diversifying and opening up new trade markets for Canada, and we will leverage all arms of the federal government, including the Trade Commissioner Service and Export Development Canada, to tailor our export goals to key markets with the highest chance of success. Third, we will strengthen our uranium and fuel opportunities by making the most of our exceptional uranium resources domestically in order to reliably meet the needs of allies' nuclear fleet expansion with Canadian uranium. And finally, we will focus on next-generation innovation, whether for power, such as SMRs, microreactors, or other areas like fusion. As we finalize the strategy, I encourage those of you in this room to collaborate with us. If you have a project in mind, tell us about it. If you have an idea, pitch it to us. This strategy, this approach only works if it is cooperative, pragmatic, and guided by the real expertise you can only gain on the ground, expertise that is found in this room. We are focused on nuclear energy security and innovation from coast to coast to coast. But perhaps there's nowhere it is needed more than in our north, where bills are highest, energy security is most fragile, and sovereignty is increasingly important. In recognition of this reality, our defense industrial strategy and our efforts to bolster Canadian sovereignty, we are going to be prioritizing the North, including for new dual-use infrastructure. Of course, that infrastructure needs power, ideally power that is clean, reliable, and Canadian. That's why today I'm announcing a new joint feasibility program with the Department of National Defence and Atomic Energy Canada Limited, which will assess the potential for Canadian-controlled microreactor technology in the North. The Department of National Defence Thank you. The Department of National Defence is investing over $40 million this fiscal year to examine whether next-generation microreactors can safely and reliably provide heat and electricity for remote and northern communities, D&D, and Canadian Armed Forces facilities. Importantly, while this work supports defense and sovereignty in remote regions, it also has broader civilian potential and could support remote communities and other industrial sites looking for clean, dependable power. Finally, as those in this room know, all of this depends on technology. That is why the federal government has committed $2.2 billion over the next 10 years in capital investment at Chalk River Laboratories, Canada's national nuclear labs. This includes the new Advanced Materials Research Centre and other critical infrastructure across the campus, which will combine the capabilities of existing outdated facilities from the 50s and 60s into modern facilities and laboratory research complex that can support Canada's continued nuclear energy leadership. This facility will allow operators to conduct cutting-edge work to manipulate, cut, and experiment with irradiated materials. It will ensure Canada leads the 21st century in CANDU technology, nuclear safety, security, and forensics, small modular reactors, reactor fuel development, and supporting utilities with reactor life extension and reliability initiatives. Our upcoming strategy, alongside the work being done by D&D and AECL, points to a broader truth. If we are serious about growing our economy, strengthening energy security, and meeting our climate objectives, growing our electricity grid is the only answer. Without a reliable, affordable, clean grid, economic growth, electrification, AI and data center buildouts, and industrial revitalization are just pipe dreams. To that end, our nuclear strategy will be complemented by a broader electricity strategy focused on unlocking a grid that can power Canada, the Canada that we are building. This will take a true Team Canada effort. Fortunately, as we just heard, that is already happening. In November, our Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta included a work stream on collaborating on building and operating competitive nuclear power generation that can serve Alberta and interconnected markets by 2050. New Brunswick has signaled renewed interest in expanding nuclear capacity at Point Lepreau. Saskatchewan is actively exploring both large reactors and SMRs, as you just heard. And just a few days ago, Ontario and Yukon signed a new partnership agreement that represents the first step towards deploying small modular reactors in the Yukon. Moreover, Indigenous peoples will continue to be key partners in shaping the future of nuclear energy in Canada. We will work to support Indigenous ownership, long-term partnerships, and shared economic benefits in nuclear projects. These are ambitions, but they are also concrete signals that provinces and territories across our country see nuclear energy as part of their economic energy future, a future your federal government is laser-focused on enabling for all Canadians. In conclusion, whether we are talking about large-scale reactors, SMRs, or microreactors for remote and strategic applications, our D&D and new science and technology work, or the opportunity for thousands of good Canadian careers, the direction is clear. Nuclear energy is central to our future, whether you are talking about our economy, our security, our climate, or indeed our role in the world. The scale of the global opportunity is massive, but it is not one we should be intimidated by. It is one we should see as a chance for Canada's nuclear sector to do as we have always done and punch above our weight. With a clear strategy backed by Team Canada and the expertise that exists in this room, Canadian nuclear energy will not only power our homes, our businesses, and our industry, but we can power the world. Thank you very much, merci beaucoup, and I look forward to lots of success in the nuclear industry.